For better or for worse, ecchi is a genre that has been around for a hot minute when it comes to anime and will probably continue to be around for a while to come. That is, unless every congressman in this country with a power boner right now decides they want to ban it. But that's really beside the point. Ecchi is one of those genres in anime that just has a bad reputation. I think it's one that actually rivals isekai in terms of the kind of trash series it produces. You can go ahead and rage at me all you want for that opinion, but I think the genre breeds a lot of overblown trash that gets hyped up by more hardcore anime fans just because it's an inferior, risque version of another series. Basically, it's boobs and nothing special. The past couple of seasons haven't really done much to make me think otherwise, and my experience with ecchi in general hasn't made me feel otherwise. Because a lot of the entries that I stumble upon when it comes to this kind of stuff have more often than not just been flavor of the week excuses for 11 minutes of uncensored tits. So when one actually does something right for a change, I do feel the need to give it a bit of a shout out. Enter the anime, please put them on Miss Takamine. Not really leaving much to the imagination with that title. An ecchi rom-com slice-of-life anime centered on the misadventures of a stereotypical protag-kun named Shirota. Shirota is nothing but your usual mob-type protagonist who's got nothing special going for him. He's utterly average, or even below average in all ways. But one day, he accidentally sees the student body president of his school, Takamine, changing in the storage room. And unbeknownst to him at this moment, this would be a life-altering event. Shortly after, during one of their classes, the absolutely perfect Takamine makes a mistake for once, and this catches everyone by surprise. And of course, she promptly responds by doing the most logical thing anyone in her situation would do after ruining her stainless record: stripping her panties off in front of everyone. But this has another side effect, one that nobody ever would expect. And Shirota finds himself jumping back in time, only for Takamine to have corrected her mistake in the process. And when he confronts her about this fact, about her changing scores on a test, she yet again does the next most logical thing: threatens to frame Shirota for having tried to rape her unless he becomes her personal slave.
It was at this moment that he knew. He f***ed up.
Really taking a page out of the book of Mine from Rising of the Shield Hero. This is where we get to the core element of this show's whole thing. Takamine has the power to undo any of her actions at will if she just takes off her underwear. Where this power comes from and why it's fueled exclusively by her bras and panties is beyond me, so please don't ask. The bottom line is that when Shirota accidentally caught a glimpse of her tits in the storage room, he alone became immune to her time-manipulating power, which she calls the Eternal Virgin Road. Why that's the case? I don't frickin' know! All I know is that the author wanted an excuse to draw titties, and well, this gives him an excellent one. So Shirota's choices in life are either femdom or jail, considering Takamine has all the power in this situation. As such, our poor protag-kun resigns himself to the life of being Takamine's portable closet. My major complaints about this series are what I've kind of already voiced. The internal logic around Takamine's unusual ability makes little sense. How does she know that someone looking at her bare breasts makes them immune to her power? Do her parents know that her powers are constantly going off and that she has this ability? Is it affecting their work life? Because they've definitely seen her naked at some point, considering, how parenting goes. It's questions like these that are left not just unanswered, but generally unasked as well. She knows an oddly specific amount of information about this ability of hers for Shirota to be the very first person to have ever found out about this whole loophole. And it almost kind of begs the question, is this sort of a unexplained thing? Does she just know? Did some god explain it to her? Is this a hereditary power? How does this work?
I made it the fuck up.
None of it really makes sense once you start thinking about it. But we'll set all of that aside, because it may just end up boiling down to thinking too much about the dumb boob anime. Takamine's harsh attitude early on in the series would make you think Shirota is effectively nothing more than a useful tool to her, but the show seems to heavily lean into this idea that she may have set this whole situation up intentionally. We do find out Takamine's been aware of Shirota for quite some time, as in, She has had eyes for him for quite some time, and they were previously friends in elementary school and bonded over taking care of a stray cat. And in stereotypical protag-kun fashion, Shirota's forgotten this part of his life and doesn't even really remember having ever met Takamine. And of course that frustrates her because she really wants them to be as intimate as they used to be. Or more so, in fact. But that sets the stage for some of the character work that does happen in this show, which is a step up for a lot of ecchi that I've actually watched. A good chunk of it will be centered around Takamine being in love with Shirota while not ever mentioning the fact that they knew each other at one point. An admission that would solve her entire problem, but I digress because you can't have a plot moving too quickly, now can you? And women can never be simple.
Women.
She seems demanding and harsh at first, but there's a sweeter and softer side to her that only Shirota really ever gets to see, since he's the only person who gets close enough to her to actually know it exists. She spurs him on to put in some actual effort in life. She actually is pretty kind to him when he's sick, and there's even a point in time where she refuses to use her power so that he can specifically focus on things he needs to get done. There's even an entire episode where she uses her ability to stop him from going out of his way for her, just so that she can be the one to do the nice things for him. And speaking of Shirota, he also has a bit of development in the form of going from an aimless drifter in life who never really puts forth extra effort to someone motivated to keep up with Takamine's demands, going so far as to actually apply to a prep school to study for college. So he actually learns the art of working hard for something, a respectable quality in any man. So in that one element, it does actually put forth an effort to try and make some compelling characters and not just have them be an excuse for sexually risque things. And that's really the thing that I think makes this whole project more likable than other trashier ecchi anime like Yandere Dark Elf or Makina-san's Love Bot. It's not a flavor of the week kind of ecchi that doesn't follow any kind of coherent plot structure. Its writing isn't completely batshit stupid, so there's that too. There's a core to it that lends to each episode somewhat following the events of the last, thus it feels like it's actually going somewhere. And this solves one of my biggest problems with ecchi, at least some of the ones that have come out lately and the ones that have ended up on my watch list as I've started watching a bunch of seasonals in the past couple of seasons. Ecchi can be some of the laziest writing I've encountered, just so the series has an excuse for tits. See my Beheneko video if you really want my opinion on that. So the fact that this series is a bit more oriented towards telling a proper story with some character development makes me more inclined to give it a pass. Even some of the side characters in the form of Ellie, the resident hyperactive blonde lesbian who also happens to be childhood friends with Shirota, are enjoyable. It's a much smaller cast, so we really only have a handful of named characters who actually matter, but at least it's sort of focusing on those rather than just ballooning the cast to epic proportions and not ever giving them any development, simply because it wants to spam tits in your face. And as you would expect, it's Ellie's friendliness towards Shirota that causes a bit of jealousy in the possessive Takamine, until she finds out about Ellie's, particular attractions. But for all the praise I do give it, that still doesn't make it an amazing anime. Its story is really far from perfect. The already mentioned lapses in logic around her powers I brought up previously as the examples, and Shirota being what is a boring stereotypical romance anime protagonist certainly doesn't help distinguish it. And while I really do like that it has a level of consistent story to it that isn't ass, that doesn't save this anime from being subpar in many other areas, especially when Crunchyroll seems to want to hold off on posting episodes in order to censor it. Which in and of itself is kind of a shame because this is one of the very few risque anime that actually ended up on Crunchyroll rather than HIDIVE, and it actually aired the pilot uncensored, which was a pretty big, significant thing to happen because Crunchyroll generally doesn't go for these kinds of anime. The animation and art style are really nothing special and feel largely mass-produced. There's some uniqueness in the way that faces are drawn in this, but really it's nothing that is standout distinguishably good. The story, while better than some of the other entries out there, still don't live up to the best that this genre has. And yes, I will admit, there actually are some really good, popular, properly written ecchi anime out there. There are ones with good stories. But how many times do I gotta get the loser nerd bags popular perfect girl before we get some change up? And the characters don't have any particular exceptional hooks to them. Lewd content, well, I don't mind. I've covered that in other places on my channel, and if you're really looking for that, again, go to the Beheneko video. I've said it comes down to how it's incorporated overall, so it's hardly something I would say is amazing. If you want boobs, it's probably the best option of the season, to be entirely honest, but in terms of anything else, it falls dramatically short, and no amount of Takamine dropping her panties is going to fix that issue.